Right now, cities and counties across Wisconsin are figuring out how they'll spend money from the shared revenue bill that Governor Tony Evers signed last month. The bill increased aid by about $250 million statewide and granted Milwaukee and Milwaukee County the power to raise the sales tax. And in a historic move, Milwaukee's Common Council approved a 2% sales tax increase to avoid potential bankruptcy. Milwaukee was the only city of its size in the country without the power to raise its own sales tax. The financial impact of the bipartisan shared revenue bill is going to be different for each community, but overall, every community and county will see an increase in state aid. While property taxes are still the main driver of revenue for municipalities, experts tell us shared revenue is still an important supplemental piece. After 20 years of a shared revenue formula that has remained completely stagnant, they say any increase is key.
It's not a negative for any community in Wisconsin. It takes care of our largest city in a way that essentially fixed some generation-long problems. So yeah, it's a huge step forward for all of Wisconsin, a little bit more so for some than for others, but in all cases, it's a very positive step forward.
Joining me now to talk about the shared revenue bill's impact on local municipalities is Janesville City Manager Kevin Lahner. Kevin, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So on the whole, is the shared revenue deal a positive for Janesville?
Yeah, on the whole, it is a positive for Janesville, and it is a positive for the entire state. Since I've been in the state, I've been working in Wisconsin for about 18 years. It's the one issue that I've probably spent the most time on as it relates to our state legislature, and I'm very excited that the shared revenue bill was passed. So it's a positive for Janesville. It's a positive for the entire state. We're very thankful for the work of the state legislature and the governor's office on this issue, and we really appreciate them working together to get it done.
I will say, though, you clearly might know this as well as anyone, that this shared revenue formula hasn't been adjusted in 20 years and hasn't accounted for changes in population or impact of inflation. So you're getting a bump in Janesville, about $913,000, but do you think it's enough to overcome those changes from the last couple decades here?
Yeah, so one of the unfortunate issues with this bill and with Janesville, the city of Janesville and a few other communities, is that they did not change the formula. And so the formula for cities like Janesville, like Eau Claire, like a few other communities in Northeast Wisconsin of our size and similar demographics, the formula did not change. All they did was add more. And so the bottom increase for those communities was 20%, but 20% of a small amount leaves a few of us with less of an increase and less of an impact to our overall revenues, which is a concern for us and something that we tried to change prior to the passage.
I think you kind of addressed this, but in the past, you have referenced this long-standing inequity in shared revenue payments compared to your peer cities. And so would you say that that is because of the shared revenue formula?
Yeah, so the formula has been flawed for our community. So when they froze the formula and stopped changing it many years ago, the shared revenue payment that Janesville was receiving was lower as compared to our peer communities, and it has never changed. And so despite our circumstances changing and other communities getting significantly more on a per capita basis, we have not. And that's one area that we really wish would have been addressed for us, but was not. And so that's something that hopefully we'll be able to get fixed maybe in a next session or something like that. But that is where an area where specifically Janesville, Eau Claire, and a few other communities were left out.
Well, the legislature and the governor did essentially make a commitment here to tie future increases to the growth in sales tax. Do you think that conversation, based on what you've said here, needs to be changed a little bit? Do you think going forward there are specific changes that can be made here if they're going to make increasing revenue a focus?
Yeah, I think that there does need to be some level of change that needs to be made. How we do that and how it's implemented is always a very tricky subject, because obviously you don't want to have unintended consequences that make things worse. for others if they change anything within the formula. Our increase in Janesville was 21.8%. As you mentioned, that's about $913,000. And that is a significant amount, but it is not some of the historic increases that others received as well. Mm-hmm. The increase in the sales tax, tying it to the increase in the sales tax, is a good thing for us because then that is a source of revenue that will potentially grow in most years in the state, and so that is very helpful. But I do think that there needs to be another look at the formula as a whole to address those communities that were not as benefited by this deal.
Well, this deal did give Milwaukee and Milwaukee County that option to increase their sales taxes to avoid bankruptcy, which we know Milwaukee has now done. And other municipalities not really in the same dire financial position, but do you think they should still be given an option to raise taxes in the same way?
Well, so I'm an advocate of having multiple sources and diverse revenue streams for local governments, and that's, I think, is a very positive thing in terms of allowing local governments to have a better control on things like property taxes. So when we're reliant on only primarily property taxes and shared revenue, then it just creates a huge burden on those property taxpayers to foot the bill. And so in areas in other states where they have local sales tax options, I think it's a better model just because it provides diverse revenue streams that allows you to provide the services that are needed for your communities. And as you know, every community has really significant needs right now and is trying their best to provide those, specifically around things like public safety and public works.
Well, I mean, the city increased its wheel tax rate, effective early last year. Right now, is the city council considering any other fee increases to make up, for a lack of revenue and deal with rising costs?
No, not right now. There are a few fee increases. We review our fees every year and we make incremental change just kind of based upon things like inflation and costs and stuff like that. So there are a few little minor adjustments. But the increased revenue from the shared revenue deal and some of the other legislative changes that have helped us in other areas on AIDS is going to allow us to be pretty stable in Janesville for next year and at least for a few years down the road. We're very fortunate that we have a really strong financial stability here in Janesville, and we're very proud of that. And so we're going to continue to do that. We've been a conservative community when it comes to spending. I think we're going to continue to do that as well.
And finally here, how does the city plan to allocate its increase in annual state aid payments?
Really what it does, the impact for us, is just allows us to retain the current services that we have. And so it's really going to be focused on providing employees with the salaries and benefits that they need, keeping up with increasing benefit costs. It's not money where we can actually introduce new programs or services or things like that. It really just helps us maintain our current level of services.
Well, Janesville City Manager Kevin Lahner, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.